Welcome to today's episode of Breathe Easy Utah, where we explore critical issues that affect our communities, the environment, and urban development. We're your hosts, Araceli
and Daniella.
And today we're diving into one of the most impactful projects happening right now in Utah, the Utah Inland Port. This project has sparked a lot of discussions, not just about economic development, but also its impact on air quality, sustainability, and the health of our communities. Recent surveys reveal that 2/3 of participants have experienced firsthand the negative effects of poor air quality, with many struggling with asthma or noticing the difficulty of breathing during bad air days. Activities around these areas have been even impacted as businesses close when the air quality is deemed unhealthy. Additionally, the concerns regarding air quality are echoed in traffic congestion, with a significant increase in concern after the development of the port.
Community members are also deeply concerned about the environmental effects, with a rise in worries about noise, idling, and traffic. Notably, there has been a sharp increase in concerns about the port's long-term environmental impact. Many are calling for more community engagement and transparency, with several participants suggesting that more focus should be placed on community and environmental well-being rather than just economic growth. It is clear that many feel disconnected from the development, with a large portion unaware of its implications and benefits. We are thrilled to have two experts with us today to talk about their work and insights on the important topic. First, we'll be speaking to Dr. Kelly, an associate professor of chemical engineering at the University of Utah.
Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us today. We're excited to hear more about your research and how it intersects with the development of the Utah Inland Port Authority. To start off, can you tell us a bit about your research and how it relates to air quality and human health?
Sure. I'm an associate professor in chemical engineering at the University of Utah. I've been working on air quality in Utah since about 2008. I've served on the State Air Quality Board, the State Air Quality Policy Board, and then my research focuses on the intersection between air quality, health, and energy. And then more recently, I've gotten really involved in sort of community engaged networks of air quality measurement. And that's really good because state monitoring is great, but each monitoring station is very expensive. You're looking at somewhere between like $200,000 and $400,000 plus the staff to take care of that. And community engaged lower cost monitors can really help complement that, and it can help show us things that we would not otherwise see.
Okay, thank you for that answer. It was really interesting to hear what your research and what you've done in the field. So, given your extensive work with air quality, how detrimental is the Utah Inland Port for these west side communities who are already facing worse conditions?
Yeah, one challenge is that our airshed is what's called constrained, meaning we're at pretty much as much emissions as we can handle. And those emissions are not distributed evenly throughout the valley, as you know. So the west side communities have disproportionately higher levels of pollution, and there are some studies that show they've got disproportionate health impacts from those emissions. And then you're adding to an already constrained airshed and an overburdened community, you're adding more emissions.
That's good to know. When looking at environmental concerns of this development, we asked the participants in our survey to mark down specific concerns that they felt before and after the development. We listed options such as traffic congestion, noise concerns, health impacts, and more. And the largest change in response was that the environmental concerns were going from 20% of the respondents before and the development to 42% afterwards. Mm-hmm. With your experience in air quality policy, what do you think are the most pressing environmental concerns that need to be addressed as the Utah Inland Port develops, and how can we mitigate these challenges?
Yes, so a lot of big ports have an air quality or an environmental management plan, and as part of that, they make sure that you have, for example, the most up-to-date equipment, the lowest emitting equipment. And the challenge is, if you do not have such a plan, what happens is all of the ports that have the plan do not allow sort of the old polluting equipment. However, if you do not have that plan, you end up with the old crappy equipment that none of the other ports allow. So we've seen this historically with oil and gas. Some places like the Front Range in Colorado put regulations on some of their equipment and said we're not going to allow certain types of equipment on the Front Range of Colorado because we have air quality problems. And what happened is all the equipment that they couldn't use there, they put it out into other air sheds. And we do not want to be that air shed. And I talked about air quality, but there are other similar strategies about water consumption and so forth. So it would be great to see the inland port have an environmental management plan.
Next, we are joined by Lydia Anderson, a program coordinator who's worked on various projects related to air quality in Utah.
As someone who has worked on projects related to the air quality in Westside communities, what are the most important factors that need to be considered when developing sustainable practices?
Yeah, so something UCAIR has noticed about the West Side is there are obviously a lot of Spanish speakers. So one of the biggest things they need is just translation. Because a lot of the West Side, they don't even know about our air quality issues at all because it's just simply not being communicated to them. So another way we kind of combat that is engaging with K through 12 and children. So because they often go home with what they learn and they tell their parents. And when it's coming from a kid, the parents are kind of more likely to listen, right, than a naggy adult. So that's kind of something we've been more focused in. And parents are just more likely when it's heartfelt from the kids, you know.
When engaging, I guess, in air quality issues in general, what are the most effective ways that you incorporate that community feedback?
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned, we really have focused a lot of our projects on the West Side recently. West Side historically has faced worse air quality than residents on the East Side face. So they also are more considered a vulnerable population because the residents in those areas, they face higher rates of lower economic status, asthma, and just overall reduced life expectancy. And like I kind of have mentioned, there are more people of color that are considered a vulnerable population on the West Side as well. And I kind of mentioned our work with K through 12. So we wanted to educate them about the impacts of idling. So we ran this program called Idle Free. You helped with it, so that was fun. And it was just kind of the kids were able to go up to cars that were idling and ask them not to idle. We ended up finding a really significant decrease in idling, as it mostly just came from the kids. And even like when I would go up and talk to a car, I don't feel like they really cared. But then you get like a 10-year-old to go talk to them and be like, hey, this is harmful for kids' health. They're like, oh, yeah. So that's kind of something. And then we also recently did like some strategic planning, and that included doing a survey that gathered inputs from kind of all communities of Utah, including those on the west side of Salt Lake. And our findings showed that residents on the west side are generally less aware of the impacts of air pollution, kind of like you mentioned with the Inland Port Authority as well. And that's largely just due to the lack of effective outreach in this area. With that in mind, though, surveying and interviewing are kind of among the most effective methods for understanding the community needs and planning projects and outreach accordingly. So after this survey was really when we were able to launch more of those West Side efforts too. And we realized we need translations every time we do something on the West Side, and we should engage children too. So, yeah.
Thank you both to Dr. Kelly and Lydia Anderson for joining us today and sharing their expertise on the Utah Inland Port and Utah's air quality. It's clear that while the port promises economic development and job opportunities, it also requires thoughtful planning, collaboration, and innovative solutions to ensure that it supports a sustainable and healthy future for all Utah communities. Research on the inland port has changed our perspectives on what should be considered as adequate community engagement. From our surveys, we found a severe lack of knowledge of the Utah Inland Port development in the west side of Salt Lake. Additionally, Dr. Kelly was able to provide valuable insight into the logistics of the development and how a lack of environmental policy can bring unwanted and harmful equipment to Utah. Lydia's knowledge on community engagement and experience working on the west side of Salt Lake City is extremely valuable as we continue to strive towards building a safer environment and build a sense of community through planning.
Thank you for tuning in today's episode of Breathe Easy Utah. We would like to thank our team for helping us make this podcast possible, for their work in collecting research and producing this podcast. Thank you to Krishn and Luke for collecting and analyzing data, and Jessica for editing the podcast. And lastly, thank you to our co-hosts Daniella and Araceli, who was also able to get in touch with Lydia and Dr. Kelly. Until next time, we encourage you to stay informed, get involved, and think critically about the issues shaping our world today.